Welcome to the new video. In this recap, in front of the entrance to the Fowl mansion in Ireland, dozens of police cars surround the area in search of Artemis, a man known as one of the most dangerous thieves in the world. While reporting for television channels, journalists note that another suspect has been captured by the authorities, who take him away for questioning. Far away, in an interrogation room, Much is forced to answer questions from one of the soldiers, who asks why the criminal works for the patriarch of the Fowl family. However, the man replies that the authorities do not know the real genius behind all those crimes, since it is not the father, but his young son, who has the same name, Artemis Fowl. Realizing that the soldier does not believe his words, Much says he will tell the story of his boss, so that the officer can understand the boy's level of intelligence. In a small Irish town, there was a boy named Artemis who loved nature-related activities, especially surfing. The problem is that the boy was never very interested in attending school. Since at only 7 years old, he had more knowledge than anyone else, managing to become a European chess champion. In addition, Artemis carried out several projects and experiments throughout his childhood, earning him numerous awards in recognition of his abilities. With so much attention, the boy was sent to talk to Dr. Poe, an experienced therapist. Trying to get closer to the young man, the man asks him why he does not treat his classmates or teachers with respect, and tells him that he should not belittle people just because he feels he has superior knowledge to them. Irritated, Artemis explains that he only has admiration for those who have made a significant advance in human intelligence, and orders Poe to say what he wants to know. The man then tells him that he knows about the boy's past and is sorry that his mother died so young and so suddenly during his life. Soon after, Dr. Poe states that Artemis has a father who is often absent, and questions whether this could be the reason why the young man always tries so hard to stand out. Furious at all this, the boy insults the therapist and admits that he is tired of pretending that he needs psychological help from someone who does not even have the same intelligence as him. After this outburst, Artemis leaves, being reprimanded by Poe. Wanting to distract himself a little, the boy goes home to spend some time with his father, who is saddened to have to break the news that he will be leaving on another business trip. Tired of it all, Artemis says he doesn't like being away from his father all the time, and to comfort him, the man says his work is nearing an end. After their conversation, father and son walk together through the mansion, and hours later, the boy says goodbye to the man, who leaves in his helicopter. The next morning, Artemis wakes up in his room as usual, and upon hearing a voice shouting through the mansion, he decides to go check what is happening. In doing so, the young man encounters Domavoy, the family's sole mentor and bodyguard, who has decades of training in martial arts and weaponry, making him the most trusted member of the Fowl family. The man is talking on his phone in a tone of great concern, and although confused by this, Artemis goes to eat his breakfast. However, upon arriving in the kitchen, the boy hears the news on television, which reveals that a worldwide manhunt has begun for Artemis Fowl, the successful businessman who has been discovered to be one of the world's greatest criminals. The man was responsible for the thefts from the continent's most famous museums, which contained the most valuable items in human history. The problem is that Artemis has been reported missing, and his luxury yacht has been found abandoned on the south coast of Asia, making the situation even more complex. Upon hearing all this news, the boy becomes desperate and is restrained by Domavoy, who claims to have already sent people to the location to investigate his father's disappearance. At that moment, the mansion's phone starts ringing, and before the bodyguard can stop him, Artemis runs to answer it. Thanks to this, the young man comes into contact with a mysterious man who reveals that he has captured his father and will only release him when he gets his Akulos back. Confused, Artemis asks what this object is, but the villain claims to know about his intelligence and orders him to find out for himself. After the call, the boy asks Domavoy what an Akulos is, and the man asks him to follow him. In one of the mansion's corridors, the bodyguard activates a secret passage that leads to a basement, saying that this is Mr. Artemis' hideout, where he keeps the work of all generations of the family. Domavoy explains that every object in that room was acquired for a reason, but even after so many years accompanying his boss in his life as a powerful businessman, he had never heard anything about this Akulos. So Artemis begins to search the room for any information left by his father, and remembering the poem the man used to read to him every day before bed, he checks the file drawers. Thanks to this, the boy finds the businessman's diary, and on the last page written so far, he comes across a text where his father wrote about someone who knew about the theft of the Akulos. At that moment, Artemis remembers that his father always told him stories about fairies and other magical creatures, and realizes that these beings are real. Far away, in the center of planet Earth, magical beings live their lives in the great metropolis called Refuge City, the home of fairies. In one of the landing zones, Captain Holly walks toward her work meeting and notices that the news continues to update the population on the search for the Akulos, revealing it to be an object owned by magical beings. Soon after, the girl meets Mudge, who asks for her help in freeing him from his sentence, as he has been punished again for causing trouble. In addition, the man claims that they would make a good team together, as they could combine his thieving skills with Holly's technology to make a lot of money. However, the girl refuses to listen to Mudge and leaves, without even noticing that the criminal has managed to take her music device. Sometime later, in one of the cells in Refuge City, a prisoner named Brian is freed by the villain who captured Artemis, who claims that from now on, he will obey all of her orders. Confused, the man asks why this is happening, and the creature replies that she needs a soldier to infiltrate the ferry command so that he can help her recover the Akulos. Meanwhile, Holly arrives at the ferry police meeting, where Commander Root asks her soldiers to maintain their posts during the search for the Akulos, as there is nothing else they can do until then. In addition, the woman orders everyone to continue ensuring that the existence of fairies is not revealed to humans, and those who break this rule will be severely punished. At the end of the meeting, Holly rushes to talk to her boss, saying she has found new clues about her father's whereabouts, but the elderly woman does not allow the girl to continue with this investigation. Trying to console her, Commander Root says that Holly is still a young fairy, so she will still have many missions in her life and could become a great captain. Back in the human world, Domovoy decides to ask his niece Juliet, who has almost the same abilities as him, for help so that she can assist them in their investigation. While Artemis searches for information on his father's panel, the young woman goes to talk to him, saying that her friend needs to rest a little. However, the businessman's son refuses to do so and explains that he has already figured out what they need to find his father. Artemis then reveals that they must get help from the fairies, but this will not be an easy task, because not only is their world hidden, but the magical beings only have books written in an unknown language. All these ingenious protections were invented by Foley, a centaur who holds the title of Technology Genius of the City of Refuge. In his control room, the leader receives a visit from Commander Root, who appears alongside Holly, and without wasting any time, he reveals that one of the prisoners has escaped to the Earth's surface. As all the soldiers are on missions to recover the Akulos, the commander decides to assign Holly to the mission, and excitedly, the young woman goes to search for the prisoner. From the control room, Commander Root gives the mission instructions to the girl, who flies towards a small European town, where civilization is tormented by a giant troll, who turns out to be the fugitive from the underground world. Upon seeing the monster holding a girl, Holly strikes him on the head, causing him to throw his victim away, forcing the fairy to rescue her immediately. After taking the child away from the creature, the soldier uses a spell to help her recover and sets off to confront the troll, imprisoning him with energy threads. At that moment, the monster manages to grab Holly, and to prevent the fairy from being eliminated, Foley sends a capsule straight into the battle, creating a dome that stops time for everyone within its area. Taking advantage of the time they have, the other soldiers go to the location to arrest the troll and erase the memory of all the humans who saw Holly. After that, the young fairy decides to take another route, and despite Commander Root's threats, she stands firm, saying she will restore her father's honor. At the same time, Artemis reads his father's diary and, in addition to realizing that the man helped the fairies protect the human world, he discovers that the creature searching for the Akulos is called Opal. So, the boy meets with Domovoy at one of the locations highlighted in the diary, where they encounter Holly, and quickly, the bodyguard hits the girl with a tranquilizer. Realizing that they have lost the fairy's signal, Commander Root sounds the alarm to rescue her agent, and hours later, Holly wakes up in a cage built by Artemis. Enraged, the magical soldier tries to control the young people with her powers, but the pair use reflective glasses to avoid the spells, and the boy says he will need his prisoner's help to complete the plan. However, Holly says he will never be able to defeat the fairies and orders him to release her, otherwise they may end up being attacked by the rescue squad. Despite this, Artemis is not intimidated and says that this is exactly what he wants to happen. Minutes later, a huge storm forms in the area around the mansion, and knowing that the fairies are approaching, the boy takes Holly's equipment, while Domovoy prepares the weapon he took from the fairy's costume. At that moment, Foley freezes time once again, and the fairy army sets out to invade the mansion. With everyone in position, Commander Root appears in her combat armor, and while the team search for Holly, Artemis decides to put on his special suit. As soon as they come across Domovoy standing in front of the mansion with the boy, the fairies are confused, but at that moment, the army leader notices that the pair are in possession of Holly's weapons. Quickly, the fairies try to neutralize their enemies, but without success, and Artemis manages to defeat each of the magical creatures alongside his friend. Soon after, the boy takes one of the creature's helmets and uses the communicator to order the commander to call someone from her army so they can negotiate Holly's freedom. With no other choice, Root enters the mansion to talk to Artemis, and is outraged when she realizes that he is the son of one of the world's most notorious criminals. To control the situation, the woman decides to intimidate him, telling him to surrender immediately, otherwise they will attack them with all their might. Despite that warning, the boy is not intimidated and states that if they are indeed attacked, they will reveal the existence of fairies to the world. Artemis then states that they will only release Holly when the commander brings him the Akulos, but Root says that will never happen. Therefore, the boy decides to give the fairies 15 minutes to change their minds, and they will not be able to invade his mansion while he is alive. Wanting to end the situation once and for all, the commander orders Foley to call an experienced dwarf who can help them on their mission. So, the fairies free Much from the Howling Beak prison and send him to the location of the standoff between Artemis and the magical creatures. Meanwhile, the boy talks to Holly about the situation, and realizing that they must trust each other to deal with the details about the Akulos, he decides to take off his glasses. Artemis then tells him what happened to his father and reveals that he found the name of a supposed guardian of the Akulos, known as Beechwood, in his diary. Upon hearing this, Holly replies that this name belonged to none other than her father, who knew how dangerous the artifact was and therefore decided to hide it. Because of this, the man ended up being recognized as a criminal, and realizing that they suffered from the same problem, Artemis becomes thoughtful. At that moment, Juliet spots another aircraft approaching and alerts Artemis, while Much goes to meet with the commander. The woman says she will reduce her prisoner's sentence if he digs a tunnel to the mansion so they can rescue Holly, and excitedly, the giant accepts the deal. So Much goes to the beach near the mansion and begins his excavation, using his mouth to devour huge amounts of earth. In a few seconds, the man manages to get inside the house, and upon noticing the intrusion, Domovoy alerts Artemis, who recognizes him as a giant sent to rescue Holly. Much quickly finds a secret safe belonging to the boy's father, who asks Domovoy to let him open the compartment, as they may need whatever is inside. At the same time, the young man runs to free Holly, saying he will need her help to find out what really happened to both her parents. After a few seconds, Much opens the main door of the safe and uses magic to control the strands of hair on his head so he can pass through the metal security screen. Upon opening the compartment, the giant dwarf comes across the Akulos floating in the air, and at the same time, Artemis appears alongside Holly. The fairy girl then explains that Artemis cannot use that artifact alone, as he will be instantly eliminated by its magical power. However, before the boy can retrieve the object, Much alerts the fairy army, and Opal is updated by one of her soldiers, who reveals himself to be Brian, the traitor of the magical beings. At that moment, Foley warns that the time-freezing dome is unstable, and thanks to that, part of the ocean waves begin to hit the fairies. Taking advantage of the chaos of the situation, the traitor proceeds to arrest Commander Root, saying that the advisors of the City of Refuge have opted for new leadership. Enraged, the woman knocks out the guards around her, and the soldier explains that they need a new approach to deal with this impasse against the humans. Suddenly, a huge fairy aircraft appears in the sky, and Brian reveals that he has brought the troll to attack the mansion. Hearing the monster's roars approaching, the group runs to one of the windows, and Holly says they are about to have a terrible confrontation. Now that he is in control of the situation, Brian orders the army to block the use of magic inside the mansion, stating that they need not bother saving Holly, since the girl's father is nothing more than a traitorous bastard of the magical kingdom. At that moment, the troll is thrown into the mansion, knocking everyone away, and so that the group can recover. Domovoy distracts the creature by running through the rooms of the mansion. At the same time, Artemis and Juliet join forces to help the giant, who shouts for them to run with him, as they have no chance against that enemy. Realizing that Holly is stuck in the chandelier, Much runs to help her, but ends up hanging next to the fairy. In order to rescue their companions, Artemis and Domovoy drag the sofa under the pair, but at that moment, the troll appears chasing Juliet. Furious, the monster throws the furniture away, causing the bodyguard to be thrown along with it. Much then jumps on the troll's back, who throws him towards the stairs, and in order to keep the Akulos protected, he decides to swallow the artifact and yells for everyone to run to the second-floor balcony. Juliet immediately tries to run across the hall, but the monster stops her, and Holly helps her jump to the other side. Thanks to this, the girl manages to reach one of the rooms with Artemis, who shoots at the creature, and before the young people are attacked, Domovoy appears, attacking his enemy with the sofa. However, the man is easily knocked down, and when she sees the troll holding Artemis, Holly destroys the room's window with the chandelier. Soon after, the boy jumps to protect himself from the monster, and quickly, Juliet and Domovoy do the same. But the man ends up falling to the floor, while the girl remains hanging. The fairy then frees herself with Artemis' help, and as soon as the troll jumps toward the chandelier, the pair split up to attack him together. During his shots, Artemis drops his magic weapon on the floor and runs to retrieve it, but at that moment, the chandelier's support begins to give way. Realizing that his boss's son will be eliminated, Domovoy throws himself to save him, causing the troll to crush his body along with the chandelier. In a panic, the young people try to find a way to help the man, and outside, the time-freezing dome is about to dissipate, and more fairy soldiers begin to be eliminated by the consequences of this. After managing to remove Domovoy from under the troll's body, Artemis begs Holly to help his friend, but the girl explains that her magic has been cut off, so there is nothing she can do. To comfort him, the bodyguard tells him that everything is fine and says goodbye to his great friend, who recites a poem in tribute to the man. At that moment, the soldiers begin to argue with Brian, and despite the traitor's orders, the captain of the fairy squadrons shouts for Holly's magic to be returned to her, as they believe the main threat has already been neutralized. Noticing that her spells have returned, the fairy wastes no time and uses healing magic on Domovoy, who comes back to life instantly. At the same time, the army of magical beings begins to retreat, as the temporal dome is about to collapse. Soon after, the group gathers on the mansion's balcony, and upon realizing what is about to happen, the young people run inside to protect themselves, while Holly and Much go outside. After rescuing a fisherman who was stuck in the air, the fairy tries to leave, but ends up being pulled into one of the time vortexes. Quickly, Much burrows underground to protect himself, and outside, Holly escapes the vortex unharmed. At that moment, the time-freezing device is destroyed, generating a huge magical explosion that lasts a few seconds. At the end of the confrontation, the commander orders the girl to return to the fairy kingdom immediately, but Holly refuses to do so and reunites with Artemis inside the mansion. Now that they have the Akulos, the group gathers in the library, and Holly uses the artifact's power to try to rescue her friend's father. At that moment, Opal declares that Artemis has failed in his mission and prepares to eliminate her prisoner once and for all. The problem is that the evil fairy's attack ends up being faster, and before he can be rescued, the man is eliminated by Opal's spell. Realizing that the Akulos was unable to bring the businessman back, Artemis despairs and begins to run through the mansion while screaming for his father. Holly then apologizes to her friend for not being able to help, but at that moment, magic manifests itself in one of the rooms. Artemis quickly runs to the spot, where he is reunited with his father, who hugs him, while Opal screams furiously from her hiding place. When he encounters Holly, the man says that he worked alongside her father, who was a very brave friend who helped him protect the Akulos from the enemies of the fairies. Artemis' father then hands her a list of Opal's accomplices, saying that the man's last request was for him to give it to his daughter. When they meet again, Domovoy hugs his boss. Subscribe for more recap videos.